Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Megillah. We are up to Perik Aleph Mishnah Hey. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'elu Nishmat Neria ben Svetlana Aranbayev and Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov Menuchatam Began Eden Amen and Avdi ben Chaim Lechaim v'Refuah Shelema Daniel Shalom ben Rosa B'Tor Shah Chulei Israel. The remaining Mishnayot of this chapter do not concern reading the Megillah or any other laws of Purim. They appear here because, like the previous Mishnah, they contrast two related areas of law using the phrase, there is no difference between X and Y except, etc. So the Mishnah begins, En ben Yom Tov le-Shabbat el ochel nefesh bilvad. There is no difference between Yom Tov and Shabbat except in regard to food preparation. Melacha, forbidden activity, is permitted on Yom Tov for the sake of preparing food, but not on Shabbat. Now, as a rule, the forms of work, melacha, that are prohibited on Shabbat are also prohibited on Yom Tov. The Torah makes an exception, though, for preparing food. It says in Sefer Shemot, chapter 12, verse 16, no melacha may be done on the first and 7 days of Pesach. However, that which is eaten by any soul, that alone may be done for you. Only some of the 39 main categories of melacha are permitted on Yom Tov, even for food preparation. These include kneading, cooking, lighting a fire, transferring, and slaughtering. Other melachot, such as harvesting and trapping, are prohibited even for this purpose, and the Art School Seder discusses this in the introduction to Masechet Betzah. Our Mishnah implies that even the permitted melachot, kneading, cooking, etc., may be done only to prepare food and not for any other reason. Now, this is the view of Bet Shammai. According to Bet Hillel, however, the melachot permitted for preparing food are permitted for other Yom Tov needs as well. For example, Bet Hillel ruled that one may carry in the street the melachah of transferring anything that is needed on Yom Tov, such as a child, lulav, or Torah scroll, while Beit Shammai forbid carrying such items, and this is discussed in Mishnah Masechet Betzah, chapter 1, Mishnah 5. The Mishnah continues, En ben Shabbat Yom HaKippurim, ela shezeh zidono bidei adam, v'zeh zidono b'karet. There is no difference between Shabbat and Yom Kippur. Now the Mishnah refers only to the penalties for desecrating Shabbat and Yom Kippur. In regard to prohibitions, there are several differences between the 2 days. For on Yom Kippur, one is prohibited to eat, drink, wash, apply lotion, wear their shoes, and engage in marital relations. So the Mishnah is discussing the penalties. There is no difference in penalty between Shabbat and Yom Kippur, except that the deliberate desecration of Shabbat is punished by a court of people. If witnesses testify that a person desecrated Shabbat immediately after having been warned by them or others that the act is prohibited and that it carries a death penalty, the Sanhedrin, the high court, sentences him to execution. While the deliberate desecration of Yom Kippur is punished with karet, which is imposed by the courts of heaven. The punishment of karet, cutting off, takes one or more of several forms: the premature death of the sinner, the loss of his future generations, and the loss of his place in the world to come. It should be noted that one who deliberately desecrated Shabbat is likewise punished with karet if witnesses did not testify to the crime or if he was not given a warning. And that is then of Mishnah Hey. Mishnah Vav now deals with a neder, a vow. A neder is a statement to which a person forbids the use or benefit of an item to himself or to others. A person can prohibit his own property to himself or to others. He can also forbid another person's property to himself, but he cannot forbid another person's property to its owner or to anyone else besides himself. But he could make a neder. For example, a person says, this loaf of bread is forbidden to me, or my loaf of bread is forbidden to Reuven. Such a statement is effective under biblical law, meaning that the person to whom the neder applies becomes biblically forbidden to use or benefit from that item, as it says in Sefer Bamidbar, chapter 30, verse 3. Depending on its wording, a neder can prohibit only a certain type of benefit. Our Mishnah defines the difference between a neder that prohibits all types of benefit and one that prohibits only benefit related to food. En ben amudar ana mechavero lamudar mimenu ma'achal. There is no difference between someone who is prohibited by neder to receive any benefit, meaning the person who made the neder did not specify any particular type of benefit, so included all forms of benefit, from another person, and someone who is prohibited by neder to receive only food-related benefit from another person. So again, there's no difference between someone who prohibited himself by neder to receive any benefit from another person. Either he had prohibited another person's property to himself, or the owner of the property had prohibited to him, and someone who is prohibited by neder to receive only food-related benefit from another person. In this case, the person who made the neder said that he was prohibiting benefit that leads to food. Except that one who is forbidden to receive food-related benefit is allowed to set foot on the other's land and to use any of these utensils that are not used to prepare food, while one who is forbidden to receive any benefit may not engage even in these activities. A person who is forbidden to derive food-related benefit from another may not draw any benefit from that person's property that can help him to make or buy food. This includes all benefit that has a monetary value, because by gaining such a benefit for free, he saves the money they would otherwise have paid for it, and he cannot use that money to buy food. The only benefits permitted are those that do not have a monetary value, such as walking on the person's land, because one usually does not have to pay for such benefit, and using utensils that are not used in food preparation, if they are not usually rented out, and so one would not pay for them in any event. However, a person who is prohibited by a neder to derive any benefit from another may not engage even in these activities. These two activities then show the difference between a neder that forbids only food-related benefit and one that forbids any benefit. The Mishnah turns to a different type of neder. There are two main methods by which a person can obligate himself to bring a sacrificial offering. A, he says, I obligate myself to bring an offering, in which case he commits himself to designate an animal later and then brings it to the temple. The offering brought to fulfill this type of promise is called a neder. B, he indicates a particular animal and says, this is an offering. With this very statement, he designates a specific animal that he intends to offer. All that remains for him to do is to bring it to the temple. This type of offering is called a nidava. The Mishnah states a practical difference between nidarim and nidavot. And ben nidarim and nidavot, there is no difference between nidarim and nidavot. Now, a person who promises to bring an offering must bring it within a certain time limit. This law applies to nidarim and nidavot alike. There is no difference between them. Nidarim chayav b'chayutan, except that one is responsible for nidarim, which means that if he cannot bring the animal that he eventually designated, meaning it was died or stolen, he must bring another in its place. Unedavot eno chayav b'chayutan, but he is not responsible for nedavot, which means that if he cannot bring the designated animal, he does not need to replace it. A neder is an offering that one brings to fulfill the promise. I obligate myself to bring an offering. Since he imposed the obligation upon himself, if he cannot bring the first animal he designated, he remains personally obligated to bring until he brings another one. In the case of nedavah, he never undertook a personal obligation. He merely designated an animal by saying this is an offering. Therefore, if he is unable to bring that animal, he does not need to bring another. And that is in Today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.